Good morning, everyone. I'm Joanne Coons. Today is Tuesday, March 30th, and I'm here with John Cipher. We are going to be hearing from him again today on why management is hard and how to make it easier. And I can tell you from my experience with him that that's easier said than done. But if you have a good accountability partner to keep you on track, it's worth it. It's like that. It's like going to the gym every day and then you slow to see the progress. And then all of a sudden you see someone and they're like, man, you look great. Like all of a sudden the business is running much smoother when you do put that time in. So thank you for joining us, John, as always. I'm anxiously awaiting your fantastic pictorials because you always have some infographic that is that drives home the point. So wanted to just kind of see what you've got for us today.
Okay, well, you'll like the first one. Let me share the screen here.
How did I know?
So this is called Management is Hard, No Bull. And I'm aware that that's an ass and not a bull in that picture, but it's a political cartoon of a guy named John Bull. So I thought No Bull was a better headline than what I could have done. So let me introduce myself as my name is John Cipher. I've owned several companies all my working life. I've never had a job. I've started some, bought some, sold some. My craziest management experience was when I owned and ran a company that was 1,500 miles away from where I lived. So I obviously had to think differently about what it meant to manage. And it took me a while to figure out because all of a sudden, it occurred to me one day, not all these people think like I do. And that was like a big shock. But I came to learn some things about it. And I've helped companies for the last 25 years learn from my mistakes at ceobootcamp.com. And today I want to help you learn some of what I've learned without making your own mistakes. So I want to say thanks to Joanne and Marina for having me here. Let's get started. So we have to start with what is management? And management, by definition, is getting work done through other people. And I picked this picture because of this guy. He's the coxswain. He has no oars. He can't move the boat forward. He can't, if the others disappeared, there's nothing he can do. There's two parts to that definition. Getting work done, work is one part, and through people, that's the other part. The interesting thing about this guy is he's the only one that sees where the boat is going. So even though he can't get there on his own, he helps them steer. Mm-hmm. But let's talk about why management is so hard. And I'm going to cover 3 reasons today. The first reason is that it's not your full-time job. You may be the coxswain, but you also have to row. Or you may be the orchestra conductor, but you also play an instrument. Or you may be a lawyer, CPA, engineer, architect, whatever, and you still do a lot of client work. You may feel like managing people is a distraction from your, quote, real job. And if that's the case for you, you probably feel like this guy in this picture, but you have to decide where you're going with your company. Do you want it to be a stage 2 company, or do you want it to stay as a stage 1 company? If it's a stage 1 company, you will still do mostly the client work, and you'll do most of it, and you'll have to manage your people in a different way. But if you want to grow it to a stage 2 company, you'll actually get out of the client work. You'll have other people, actually should be people that are better than you at doing some of that work, at doing the selling, and you'll spend most of your time internally in the company. It's a choice you can make. You just can't be in the middle. The first stage 1 companies, they can make a very good living for a lot of people. They can't grow as big, and there's not as much wealth in the company if you ever wanted to sell it. So those are some distinctions and some decisions that you have to make. But regardless, if you're in that early stage 2 company where you're still doing a lot of client work, or you're stage 1, the solution is a thing called time blocking. And we've talked about this before. You block out time on your calendar for when you're producing, when you're rowing, when you're playing your horn, or whatever you're doing as the actually producing work. And then you block out separate times when you're managing. And if you do those 2 things, it will make it easier for you to dedicate time to both of those. The second reason that management is hard is you're afraid of micromanaging. Here's this warning that says, to avoid injury, don't tell me how to do my job. And this situation is a little more complicated than the first one, but let's remember, what's the purpose of a business? The purpose of a business is to create a customer. So if something has to be done a certain way in order to give the customer the value that they're paying for, or if it has to be done by a certain time so that others in your organization can do their part in time to give the customer what they want and what they need, then it's not micromanagement. But
Mhm.
you probably, like the coxswain in that boat, you probably see things that other people don't see. So it's your job to explain it to them, to explain the connection between why you have this deadline or why we have this rule and how it ultimately affects the customer. People don't see what you see, and that's your job to explain it. But then you should get rid of all the other rules that don't affect the customer. Anything that's arbitrary or that's really not in part of that workflow chain, then that might be micromanagement. The second piece of this micromanagement is support. Like I said, there's two parts. There's getting work done, but it's getting through other people. And as managers, we have to support people to do their work better. And what does that mean? Well, let's look at this quote from Antoine de Saint-Exupéry. He said, if you want to build a ship, don't drum up the men to gather wood, divide the work, and give orders. Instead, teach them to yearn for the vast and endless sea. And this is bull. I mean, can you imagine if we just did that? Would that ship float? We just get everybody excited about the sea and nobody's chopping the wood and nobody's giving orders. We don't do that when it comes to building a house. We don't get all the electricians and the plumbers and the roofers and the contract, everybody together and say, look, I'm not going to tell you guys when to show up. I'm not going to give you blueprints to micromanage how you do your work. I've got this picture from a magazine about what we want the house to look like, and you guys are really smart, so figure it out. Um, that house wouldn't ever get done, or certainly wouldn't get done on time or on budget. But that's often how we treat knowledge workers. And in most companies today, even ones that make a lot of physical products, a lot of the work is done as knowledge work. And we often say, well, these people are smart. They can figure it out. We expect them to figure out that system just because they're good. But they're good, but they're often good in a very narrow range. They don't see the big picture. And so it's our job as managers to support them and to show them, not only show them the bigger picture, but to give them tools and workflows and things. So part of that is management's job is to define the output. What do we want each person's output to look like? We want to define the quantity of it, the quality of it, what questions we expect them to answer. Sometimes we expect them to ask certain questions and not necessarily answer it, but bring those questions from their work to the rest of the team. We should describe what that is. We should describe what decisions we expect them to make. Not necessarily make the decisions for them or tell them what to decide, but tell them what range of decisions we expect them to make and which ones they expect to bring to us or to bring to other members of the team. Management should provide a workflow, a structure. And, Joanne, you and I were just talking about this in your organization. And this is so that people get what they need to get their work done best so that they can do their best work. And we need to think about what information they need. How will they get it? What's the communication structure? Often we just throw people in and say, well, figure it out. And as a result, they're emailing everybody. They're interrupting each other. And people aren't getting work done efficiently. There's a thing called Agile Management in the software development world, which is very, very structured. Software people are actually very creative, but the Agile workflow is very structured. There's certain people have certain rules. There's certain meetings that happen at certain times. There's output of each meeting that's very prescribed, but within that structure, they get to do really good work. Um, it's kind of like Starbucks. There's like somebody computed there's like 8,000 different ways to order Starbucks. And even if you and I ordered the same thing, there's probably 12 different ways we could order it. We could say, I want this or I want that first or the other first. And Starbucks figured out a system. Nowadays, if you order on the app, it just prints out what you need so that everybody behind the counter can see that. But it used to be that there were 2 or 3 people. One would take your order, one would make your order, and they would have to communicate. And Starbucks management figured out a way for them to communicate. The first one was figure out the cup. Is it a hot cup, cold cup? What size cup is it? By the way, did you know that Starbucks has a short? It's not just tall, grande, and venti. They actually have a short, but it's not on their menu because it was, I think early on, they just had a short and a tall. And then they said, we're making more money on the talls. Let's not push the shorts, but it's still there. So if you want to go into your Starbucks and order a short latte or a short whatever, you'll get a smaller one and it'll cost less. But anyway, it was management that put this system in place of how they would communicate. They didn't expect each person to come up with it at each store, because then if you had it in a different store, it would be a different way to do it. So management provides these constraints. Let's say we have a poetry business. That's kind of a weird business, but are we going to make haikus? Are we going to make sonnets? Are we going to make free verse? That's up to management to decide. And if you're making a sonnet, here it turns out is the rhyme scheme for a Shakespearean sonnet. I didn't know till I Googled this that there's other kinds of sonnets. They all have 16 lines, or however many these are, 14 lines. But there are different ways of rhyming for a non-Shakespearean sonnet. But again, within that constraint, incredible creativity can happen. And so that's management's job, is to make those constraints that give the customer what they want and let people do their best work within that constraint. So the solution to number 2, the micromanagement problem, is to describe the output and to provide support. What I've found is that often entrepreneurs expect things or assume things without actually describing them in detail. And then they get frustrated. People aren't doing what I said. These people are idiots. Blah, blah, blah. I expect that they would do this. Well, did you tell them that that's what you expect? Did you tell them explicitly? So what I suggest is, when you find yourself frustrated because an expectation has not been met, or because something you assumed would happen didn't happen, look at yourself and say, wait, did I really explain that in a way that makes them crystal clear to them, not just to me, but to them? And a lot of times we have assumptions in how we manage that we don't explain clearly. I learned this years ago. My wife broke her leg and was not able to put weight on it for about 5 months. And so I ended up doing all the grocery shopping, which normally she does. So she would send me with a list. So the list would say chicken stock. So I would get to the chicken stock aisle, and there would be 17 different brands of chicken stock in 5 different sizes. And so I'd have to call her up. What do you mean by chicken stock? And I'd get to the next aisle, and there would be something else. There were all these other questions that she kind of just intuitively knew what she wanted. Oh, it was the green box. It's over here, whatever. I didn't know that. And so I had to help her get very specific, or I'd be running back and forth, returning stuff and getting the real stuff. So when you have these expectations, when you have these assumptions, make sure that you are clear. And like I said, if they don't affect the ultimate output for the team or for the customer, get rid of them. It doesn't matter. That is micromanaging. But if it does affect what the customer gets, then it isn't micromanaging, and people need to know that.
And this is already like something that you can see very easily in your business if you stop back and look, but COVID has really kind of shoved this in your face. So when you're trying to, one thing that we've seen from a lot of our clients, they're like, well, if everyone's working from home, how will I know what they're doing? And this described the output. The people that are not good, diligent, effective workers are wasting time at home just like they are at the office. And the people that are effective workers are productive at home just like they are at the office, if you're driving the output. And that's, once you step back and see that, then it's throughout the organization. So we had an experience here where we started in one area, and then we were like, oh my God, it's everywhere. It's like trying to paint one wall. Like, now you got to do the whole room. So it's made a huge difference, and it relieves that frustration that you're describing, where it's like, but like, why won't they just do it? And it's like, well, how do they, John would always say, how do they know if they did a good job?
Yeah.
Well, this can't be obscenity where you just know it when you see it. It's got to be something where they can say, oh, did I make, 20 widgets today? Yes or no? Did I make them well? Did they fall apart? And those things were very difficult to outline for me. Like, that's not what I'm good at. I'm not a process person. Fortunately, Courtney and Amanda on our team really are process people. And so we had some help kind of getting those things nailed down. And when we went through them, Amanda would say, well, what does that mean? When you like, okay, I would say, oh, okay, well, after this happens, then they go over to Elizabeth, and Elizabeth, well, who marks it in HubSpot? Who does this? Who does that? Well, I don't know. It's just what needs to happen, and you don't realize the level of detail until you start to really get there. So we could not have accomplished what we have without the team members that are better at this than me. This right. Is not what I'm good at. If it was, it would have already been in place. But it's so important, and it's so easy to look over.
Yeah.
This
and
part.
So,
and
go ahead.
One thing I saw in the CPA firm is that when I was really preparing the tax returns hot and heavy, I would hear people and talk to clients and see the numbers that showed who was really profitable was lean and mean, teeny tiny, one-man band, and super giant. But I was always like, gosh, if you have 20 employees, you're just getting killed. Like, their revenue is higher, but the expenses are even higher. And so the profit frequently was less. And I always just wrongfully accused that size of company of not being ideal. But after some experience, it seems like the real problem is they don't go from one-man band to orchestra conductor with the proper processes in place. The huge companies got teams of people that they pay to make the processes, so the person doesn't have to come up with it. And the one-man band has the benefit of being the one-man band, so it happens by default. But when you get to that middle segment, if you don't do specifically this step, it's a disaster. Emotionally, time frame wise, productivity wise, efficiency wise, profitability wise, it's stacking, and it's unbelievable. So
yeah. And I've been saying, you bring up a point. I've been saying management has to do this. Mm-hmm. You don't have to do it on your own. You don't sit in your office on your ivory tower and get the commandments from the Lord and bring them down to the people. You may have, and probably should have, if you're not good at this kind of thinking, you could have people on your team that do it better than you. Mm-hmm. Or sometimes you have an idea, but the other people have nuances and changes and suggestions to make it even better. So you're responsible for it to happen, but that doesn't mean you have to produce it all. But you can't support your people if it's not happening.
Now, we do have a question. Someone said, how do you combat the employee that gives excuses, even though you've given exact direction to tasks?
So in that case, there's usually one of three causes. Either somebody doesn't know how to do the work, they don't want to do the work, or they can't do the work. Sometimes you don't know the difference between those last two, whether they don't want to or they can't. But you can train them so they know how to do it. And then you can say things like, well, what's getting in the way? And if it's something that you can eliminate, maybe you can eliminate that. If otherwise, it becomes very clear that either they can't do the work or they don't want to do the work. In which case, if you have a big enough company where you can move them to another position where they can do that kind of work, then great. If your company is too small and you don't have those options, let them go work for a competitor. That's what I say. But if you aren't clear and very specific and lay it out in measurable terms, which is harder to do for knowledge work than for physical work, but it can be done. And it has to be done if you want to expand and grow your company. Once you do that, then it will be obvious that they either can't do it or don't want to do it, and then they can go work somewhere else.
It's also easier to be off the hook, I think, from my standpoint as the manager or the owner, to say, well, they should just know, or this is, you have to document it. And we had a situation here recently where it was like, well, one of the lawyers gave instruction to a staff member to do that, and the person did what they thought doing that meant, but there were more steps, and the lawyer is frustrated, like, how did they not know that? And the staff person is like, well, I didn't want to go outside of our bubble until I had your permission. And so do it meant something different to both of them. And if you can sit back without ego in the way, right? Like, you can see, like, okay, I can see how that happened. Even if I disagree, now I know, okay, I have to even be that clear as to say, do it and send it or whatever. So those things seem to be, especially if you've been in the business and you've got new people that are not familiar with that line of business. There's, term of art and things that mean something to you that might not mean something to them. And those breakdowns are always when I'm like, put it in the system, put it in the documentation right now. And that's really been remarkable. And, we are not, like, Moses is not part of the sea. We are not cured. But we really have made great strides here in the last few months. So,
and if you don't do that, what you'll end up doing is you'll grow your company, and you'll have a handful of people at the top who are very good and have experience and kind of get it, and you'll have a bunch of people at the bottom who are doing the work, but you won't have anybody in the middle. Mm-hmm. And you won't be training people, and you won't have middle management or middle team leaders. And you'll be at risk if those people at the top end up retiring or going somewhere else, because that knowledge is all in their heads.
Yeah.
And you'll say, I'm looking for I just can't find the right people. Well, maybe you can't find the right people because you're expecting them to come in with all this knowledge, and you aren't training them and you aren't providing it. And if you do, you can actually find better people.
Yeah. And then, if you've got that training manual, which can't be a useless, outdated, giant Bible-sized book, it's got to be a breakdown of those tasks on what it means to do this or make that or prepare this. What does that mean? It's like the recipe book. And when we started, it was overwhelming to just sit and type. And one thing we found very helpful was a lot of times we just jump on a Zoom and record it. And, okay, Elizabeth, tell me how you do this. And even if it's not super straight line, like, I forgot to tell you, I also, before I do this, I did that. That's a great way to at least capture it. And at least it's in one spot. And then someone else can type it up or just listen to the video later if they need to know. So that the library of how you convey that information doesn't necessarily need to be in some difficult to consume, Word document of to-dos. It doesn't have to be like that anymore, which is nice.
And that works great for things where you're showing somebody how to do it in a computer system. Yeah. So you can have your screen, and you can actually, you don't just say, open this. It might be 3 steps to open this. You click on the menu, you click on this link, you click on that link, and then this opens. Mm-hmm. And if you just say, open this, you kind of assume that they know all those pieces, and you may not. So
we just we're documenting how we enter a real estate closing into our client database. And Amanda said when she finished, it was 4 pages of click here, enter here. Like, when you say that, like, well, I just have to put it into Rocket Matter. Like, you don't appreciate also as the supervisor what that entails and how much time it might take when you're trying to be realistic about how much someone can do in a week, a day, a month, an hour, whatever. And you may not appreciate how much extra steps you possibly could eliminate. Like, go ahead and put it in HubSpot and in Rocket Matter and in QuickBooks. Well, now that went to, 15 minutes and opportunity for a mistake and that redundancy. So
yeah. Now, the good news is when you have it documented to that level of detail, one is if somebody gets sick or is on vacation or whatever, the work doesn't have to stop. But the two is you can then promote those people or move them into different positions, because now it's easier to replace them by training somebody else to, if not do their full job, at least take over certain of those tasks.
Yeah.
So let's get to the third reason that management is hard. And that is, it's not social intercourse. And it better not be any other kind of intercourse either. And what I mean by that is that management requires unnatural social interactions. And this came from a blog post by Ben Horowitz. Ben Horowitz is a co-founder of the VC firm Andreessen Horowitz. And he wrote this blog post about making yourself a CEO and said, being a CEO requires lots of unnatural motion. And as I'm reading it, it really applies to all managers. And here's why he calls it unnatural, because it's natural to make people want to like you, to be nice, to overlook certain faults and mistakes. And he says to be a good CEO, and this is true of manager too, in order to be liked in the long run, you have to do many things that could upset people in the short run. And those are what he calls unnatural things. So let's say you're out with your buddy for a drink and they tell you a story. Well, you're not going to say to them, that story had a lot of potential, but the buildup was really kind of slow and too long-winded, and you really didn't punch the punchline. So what I'd like you to do is go back, fix it, come back to me tomorrow and tell me that story again. That's a very unnatural act in a social setting. But in a business setting, that's what you need to do. You may need to do that in order to, again, it's getting work done through people, and to help people do their best work, you as their leader have to be unnatural sometimes. And I see this where people are afraid to call out their employees because they don't like confrontation. It's not what you would do in a social situation, but work is not a social situation. And oftentimes you hear people say, well, our company is like a family. And when I hear that, I think there's going to be trouble, because you didn't hire your family. You don't get to fire your
Hopefully.
family. Yeah, right. For the most part, Um, and what I really think that means that we have a lot of love and compassion and care for people, and that's great. But the better analogy is that a company is a team and not a family. There's a lot of love. There can be a lot of love on a team. There can certainly be a lot of compassion and a lot of respect, but there's also an awareness of performance, that you have to perform for the team and for your teammates, or you may not be on the team. And that respect for performance is not always there in a family. And so it's unnatural in a business to think, oh yeah, we can just love and respect everybody without thinking about the performance. And so one of the solutions to this unnatural act business is a thing that Kim Scott devised called radical candor. And I would suggest you Google Kim Scott. This is a picture of her book. She, I think, also has now a consulting company that does this. But there's a lot of videos. Often they're short. They're 15, 20 minutes. Some of them are shorter than that. Kim Scott and radical candor. And what she says is there are two axes for communication at work. One is this care personally. This is the up and down one. Do I care? Not only do I care personally about this person, but do they know how much I care? And the second one that goes crosswise is challenge directly. Am I willing to tell them the stuff that is unnatural, that is maybe uncomfortable? Am I willing to challenge them? And if they don't know how much you care, then if you challenge them directly, it'll be this yellow box in the bottom, obnoxious aggression. If you don't challenge them and they don't know how much you care, it'll be manipulative insincerity. If you do show how much you care, but you're not willing to challenge them, it'll be what she calls ruinous empathy. And that's where you put up with somebody, they're not doing great work, you're not willing to challenge them, but you like them and they like you, and you just have all these great times together, and you pat each other in the back, you go out for drinks, you do all this wonderful stuff, and then one day you have to fire them because they're just not getting the work done. And they're like shocked. What happened? Why didn't somebody tell me? And she has a great incident of this. And her point is, this is not about who you are. It's really about all the different interactions you do throughout the day. And there'll be some that you do great and you'll do fine in the radical candor side, and there'll some you won't. And one of the things she says in one of her videos is, you have to focus on the care personally side, and a lot of radical candor is praise. It's not the negative stuff. But the way to start is to ask for it, to say, this is what I'd like to do. I'd like you to give me some radical candor. I'd like to make it safe. And this is hard if you're the boss, to make it safe for people to challenge you directly and to not respond in a defensive or a way that puts them down. So start with yourself. And she has some, like I said, some great stuff. I don't have time to do it all here, but that's the solution to this unnatural act of making this culture of radical candor, where we can all push ourselves to be better because we know how much each other cares personally. So that's what I have today for Management is Hard, No Bull. If you'd like a copy of this deck, email me. Joanne's going to post the video. Be sure to let me know if you do email me which session you want, because I do a lot of these. And one of the things I help my clients do and help their teams do is get better at becoming managers. And if that makes sense for you, email me, john@ceobootcamp.com, and I'd be happy to help.
Yes, as we painfully saw, we were trained as lawyers and accountants, not as managers. We do have another question, John, and Christine is asking, what are some of the best methods to tie compensation or incentives to performance?
One of the things I would first think about is that compensation doesn't always motivate everybody the same way. If people feel like they're making enough and there's a modicum of improvement year to year, often giving them more money won't do it. But as entrepreneurs, that shocks us because it motivates us. It does tend to motivate salespeople, obviously. So first of all, figure out if that's really going to motivate somebody. Some people are motivated, particularly in small companies where you can't always match a big company's salaries or benefits package, but you can match them in things that other people care about, like perhaps flexibility of either their work hours or the times they work or the projects that they work on. A lot of times in smaller firms, somebody will get to work on a lot of different projects that they wouldn't in a big company. And so there's other ways that you can motivate people sometimes. When money is part of it, you should do a couple of things. One is make sure that you're tying their compensation to things that they can actually control. So if you just say, as the whole company gets, has a profit sharing plan, if they can't control that profit, then it really doesn't motivate them to act. The other thing that I've seen people mistakenly do is reward people financially for past activities or past loyalty where they didn't tell them that's what they were doing it for, or they didn't say it ahead of time. If like I said, if somebody's happy where they are, if they're fairly compensated and you want them to do more, reward them and tell them, if you can do this, if you can, show this kind of output, then I can give you this kind of bonus, rather than saying, hey, you did great. Here's a bump for that. I've seen people give away 40% of their company to a loyal employee just because they were loyal, and it's been 20 years and you've been great. And I want to make you part owner. And like, oh my God, they didn't understand the complications of that and, that kind of stuff. So tie the compensation to what they can control, have it be measurable, and have it be fair. So if you're going to do this for one person in that position, it should be able to be done for other people in that position. And like I said, sometimes that's more motivating than you think, and sometimes it's less.
Wow. So, and that is also easier said than done. You're full of this.
Compensation is a really hard one. The best compensation structures are open and honest and consistent. So you can have a training grid, which is another tool that I've developed, where people understand who's trained on which tasks and who can back up each other. But you can say to people, look, if you can be trained on all these certain level of tasks, then you can get to another salary level. And that should be consistent across the board. That should be for everybody.
Perfect.
So I will stop
All
here.
right.
Do we have other questions?
Yes, we do. Let's see. How about in the time of a pandemic? Any adjustments to management style other than it highlighting the lack of clarity about what the outputs are rather than the job description? Anything else that you've seen people do successfully or mistakenly during this time from work from home that
So usually
do better?
Usually when they say that, what we're talking about is remote learning. It's the fact that people aren't there physically together. And that requires, there are companies that had nothing to do with the pandemic years ago, started remote. They just wanted everybody to live wherever they wanted to live. And those companies have actually thought through what it means to produce work, what it means to have a meeting. They do a lot more work digitally. They do a lot more stuff in writing than they do in physical or in verbal communication. There are some companies that have a headquarters team that's in person and then remote people. One of which I read about, this was again before pandemic, but they wanted everybody to be on the same page. And if you've ever been in a meeting where some people are in the same room and some people aren't, that's the worst of both worlds. That's really even worse than a Zoom meeting. Because the people in the room get this body language thing going on and the other people don't, and et cetera. So what this company did was, if you were having a meeting of somebody down the hall from you, you still had to do it by video conference because they wanted all of that to be similar. So the first thing is, you can't just take your existing meeting structure and move it to Zoom and think it's going to work. Zoom has to be shorter, for one thing. People can't do back-to-back Zoom meetings all day. You have to have a break. Physically, if you're meeting, you typically have a break even from one meeting to the next. You're just walking down the hall where people are coming in and out. There's a 5-minute, catch your breath.
Yeah.
I suggest try to keep your Zoom meetings to 20 minutes and then have a break. Get time to regroup, to write down your notes, to do follow-up, and really think through what should be done in a meeting, what should be done through documents that people can edit and write on their own time and not face-to-face, not synchronously. So less is more sometimes with that.
One of my favorite memes that came out around this time last year was like, so all those meetings could have just been an email.
Right.
Right. As a follow-up to that question, someone said, especially with inability to financially bonus people with the pandemic, like what are some alternate ways to maybe say thank you? We've had several restaurant clients who, or preschools where the teachers came in and they helped space out desks or seating and put in cleaning protocols and helped really with that stuff. And maybe they weren't even able to pay them, maybe even before PPP. Or they did things, maybe took on different hats or operated differently within the business in a way that really wasn't their job. And you might want to say thank you, but you're like, hey, I'm lucky because you helped the business survive. I really can't give you the giant bonus. What are some other ways that people could reward those employees for sticking with them through this kind of tough time that maybe isn't dollars?
Well, first of all, I would say what you just said. This is a pandemic. I can't reward you financially as much as I would like to, but I am so grateful. Just say it. Say it more often than you think it needs to be said. Say it in specifics. That goes a long way. Letting people know how grateful you are. Maybe there are other ways that you can reward them. Maybe it's some time off. Maybe it's some things that happen down the road. Maybe you can I don't know, ask them what would make sense to them. Acknowledge that they may be, some people love working from home. They're doing much better. Some people, it's worse, particularly people with young kids. So you have to find out what's going on for them. There's a book, the people who wrote this book called The 5 Love Languages did another one called The 5 Languages of Appreciation at Work. Or I may have mangled the title, but it's like that. And what was shocking to me to read it was that not everybody likes being appreciated in the same way.
Mm-hmm.
Some people, they said, if you call them out in public and, in front of the team and say what a great job they did, they eat that up. Some people hate that.
Mm-hmm.
And you give somebody, hey, you did a great job, I'd love you to share your story, and some people eat that up. Some people hate being upfront.
Mm-hmm.
So figure out what makes sense to people, and if you can't do anything else, at least tell them what you can do, and how grateful you are, and then when things turn around,
Mm-hmm.
then do it.
Couple more questions. Chris is also following up and says, another follow-up about management in the Zoom meetings. How do you feel about a policy that allows people to drop off the meeting when their portion is done? Seen as efficient, Elon Musk style, or does it reflect as a lack of team commitment?
I think it depends why you're having the meeting, which most people don't know why they have a meeting. They just do because it's time. And sometimes the meeting makes the leader lazy. Let me give you an example. The worst meeting to have for most companies is a status meeting, where you go around the room and say, okay, I did this, I did this. There should be software in your company that lets everybody know where everybody's at on what they're doing. I've been in status meetings and watched and noticed, the reason they have this status meeting is not to communicate the status, but because people were, particularly the manager, was lazy about thinking things through and go, oh, by the way, Joe, since you're here, let's talk about this. I hadn't thought that through. Well, dang it, you're the manager. You should have thought that through. So again, it depends on why is somebody in that meeting, and why are you having that meeting? And if they don't need to be there after their piece, let them go. If it's depending on the meeting, it could be a part of time commitment or team commitment. It could not, depending.
Now, one more question that's of interest here. Do you feel it's best to train employees in all positions, or give them one job to concentrate on?
I think I'll put it backwards. I think all positions need a primary trained employee and at least one or two backup trained employees. So it depends on the positions and the number of people that you have. I don't think everybody needs to do everything in a company. And certainly as the company gets bigger, not everybody's good at the tasks that are required. As you mentioned in your organization, some people are better at thinking through workflows and some people are not. Some people are more creative or better writers, and some people are not. But every task, every position needs to have at least one backup that's trained, and you can have a training grid for that to know who's trained on what.
Another interesting question on management style is, we struggle with our team not sharing concerns when prompted in a meeting, or even when given the opportunity to do so privately. Yet they turn around and talk either behind the supervisor's back or the lawyer's back. How do you suggest handling that, where they're not taking advantage of, maybe they don't feel safe to?
Well, that's the biggest time I see that happening is when they don't feel safe. And you, as the supervisor, haven't made it safe for somebody to raise concerns or disagree. Other times I've seen it happen where some people just need time to process. And so if you lay something out in the meeting and say, what do you think? They'll come up with something. But after they've thought about it for a day or two, some people are better at thinking through what they really think. And you have to learn that about people and say, well, let's noodle on this for a day or two, and then we'll get back together. But again, make it safe for them to change their mind, to say, the other day I said this, but now as I rethink it. But then you also have to say, well, when does this actually need to be done? And if you need everybody's input by Friday, and some people need a day or two to think about it, then you need to get out there on Tuesday and tell them, this is what we need. I need you to think this through. We're going to have another meeting on Friday or another conversation on Friday, and then we're going to finalize it. So again, it's part of how you set things up as a supervisor and what your people are good at.
And the other thing I think that we've struggled with is really keeping that balance between a safe place for somebody to vent and that being able to turn toxic, where people are, you're setting it up for complaining and for bringing everybody else down. So how I think the managers respond to that when they find out that maybe somebody talked behind, the supervisor's back or something, the other people can't hear you, kind of taking that person to task, or that you can say it's a safe environment, you can talk privately, but if they see that they don't feel that way, that we see a lot with clients being kind of a consistent issue. So
yeah, and venting is different than actually having a constructive complaint.
Yeah.
And so you have to give people, expect people to be mature and hold them to it about when to vent and whether they should do it in the office or not. And sometimes when somebody's in your office talking about it, you can actually say, are you just venting, or is there something I need to do about this?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yes.
That happens at home a lot, actually.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Amanda recently put it to me. I was venting about something and she said, what would you like me to do with information like that? And I was like, you know what, that's fair. Thank you for saying that, because you also don't want to put it on somebody else and drag them down. Last question here, and then we're going to have to jump off. How about dealing with a millennial staff member? What management style do you recommend? The millennials are like the new Bank of America. Like, they're always getting the raw end of the jokes, but obviously they value things differently as a generation. So any suggestions on how to handle that?
I don't think most of the people listening to this have a big enough company that they can treat people as a generation.
Yeah.
I think if you have, if you're Amazon and you have 800,000 people was the last I heard, then, all your people chunk into different things. But you have people, just treat them as people. And what you'll find is some people of a certain age act one way, and some people of that same age act a different way, and vice versa. Find out what's important to them. Now, be open to the fact that if somebody's younger than you or their situation is different, they have more college debt than you ever imagined, or they can't buy a house because XYZ, that affects it. But you can't just write across the board, okay, everybody that looks like this, or is this age, or is this whatever. We have a funny story. Son of a friend of ours got married a while ago, and we had planned this wedding to have in our backyard. And a couple months earlier, they needed to get married right away. So we did this small wedding before the big one. And I said, this is the modern version of, quote, having to get married. Nobody was pregnant, but somebody needed to be on somebody else's insurance. So that's why they had to get married. So they did that legally, and then they had the party. But, that's different for a different generation. But, I don't think you can treat people just because of an age that they're a certain way.
Perfect. As always, thank you so much for your time and talent. And it's interesting to hear your perspective, because you've seen so many different types of companies, so many different industries, and so many different sizes, from one-man band to the big giants. So we appreciate that. Folks, as always, we record these webinars and they will be distributed. You can find them on our YouTube page, on our YouTube channel, and on our Facebook page, and on our Kuntz Associates, Kuntz Parkin web pages. Next week, we'll be coming to you with FERPTA. So if you are in real estate and you think you deal with foreign real property owners, or you don't think you deal with them, you need to join even more. I had a yoga guru who I was reading once said, if you can't meditate for 5 minutes a day, then you need to meditate for an hour. So if you think you don't run into FERPTA issues, you need the class even more. So we'll be bringing that to you. As always, we love to hear what topics you'd like to hear. So feel free to email us and let us know what's on your mind. If there's information that we can bring you, we would love to do so. Thank you, John, and we will see you guys next Tuesday.
Thank you. And thank you all for the good questions. Appreciate it.
Absolutely. Have a great day. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.